The record in the 13th Judicial District, the District Court of Greenwood, County, Kansas. This is in case number 2023 CR 300021, State of Kansas versus Alicia Wynn Bone, County Attorney Jill Gillette.
The court session begins in the 13th Judicial District Court of Greenwood County, Kansas, for case number 2023 CR 3021. State of Kansas versus Alicia W. Both attorneys, representing the state and the defendant, introduce themselves with the defendant present in person. The judge asks if any bondsmen are in attendance, since the hearing involves a possible bond forfeiture. Mr. Taylor from ASA Bell confirms he's present and steps up to speak. The court moves forward with the state's request to forfeit the bond based on the defendant's failure to appear at earlier court dates. The judge points out that the defendant missed hearings on March 29th and August 2, 2024. However, the defense attorney confirms that she is in court today. The judge then turns to the state for guidance on how to proceed.
For the state, Attorney Chris Ambrose, appearing for the defendant, who also appears in person at the Greenwood County Courthouse. Are there any bondsmen here, as this matter does come on for bond forfeiture hearing? All right, and state your name for the record, please.
With a sure bell, Your Honor.
Why don't you come on up, sir? I'm not going to be able to hear you back there.
Tom Taylor with a sure bell, Your Honor.
I still didn't hear you. You'll need to get right in front of that microphone. What's your name?
Thomas Taylor with a...
The state's Yimal. Attorney Ms. Gillette informs the court that they want to withdraw the motion to forfeit the bond, since the bondsman has now brought the defendant in. However, she asks that the defendant be taken into custody as the $30,000 bond, cash or professional, remains in place. The defense attorney, Mr. Ambrose, objects to the request, arguing that he hasn't had a chance to speak with the defendant yet. He suggests that a preliminary hearing be scheduled, giving the defendant an opportunity to explain her situation. The judge then turns to the defendant, Ms. Bone, and asks why she hasn't appeared in court since March. The judge instructs her to speak clearly into the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. All right, this matter, as I said, does come on for hearing on the state's motion for forfeiture of the bond due to the defendant's failure to appear. She's failed to appear a couple of times, March 29th, 2024, and August 2nd, 2024. It looks like Mr. Thomas, you do have her here today. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Gillette, how does the state wish to proceed on its motion to forfeit?
Jill, you're muted.
Since the bondsman's brought her in and turned her in, we'll withdraw the motion for forfeiture, but we'd like her taken into custody.
Bone tells the court that she missed her first court date because she was hospitalized, and the second time because she had no way to get there. She also explains that she hasn't had a working phone for almost a month, but is trying to get one. The judge asks if she was aware of her court dates and what steps she took to show up. Ms. Bone says she thought her second hearing was on September 1st, not August 2nd. She adds that she asked her mother for a ride, but wasn't able to get one. The judge then follows up, pointing out inconsistencies in her story. He asks where she's currently living and whether she lives with her mother. Ms. Bone replies that she lives in Iola, while her mother lives in Chenyon.
Set at $30,000 cash or professional surety.
Mr. Ambrose, anything you want to be heard on?
Well, Your Honor, I have not heard from Miss Bone. However, as a matter of course, we would object to her being placed into custody. I believe that based on what I'm seeing here, it looks like we need to get a preliminary hearing set on this regardless. Miss Bone might be able to provide us some insight as to where she's been and what her plans are to make sure she's going to get back to court in case the court was to provide her an alternative.
Ms. Bone, why haven't you been in front of this court since March? Now you're going to have to sit up in front of the microphone.
I had not had transportation, and the first court date that I missed was actually because I was sick. I was in the hospital, and the second time was due to the transportation, and I have not had transportation for over a month, and I do not have an active phone. It's been almost a month that I have not had an active phone. I'm in the process of getting an active phone.
So you knew you had court on those 2 days, you just didn't make it in?
The second one, I didn't know what day it was, but I thought it was actually September 1st is what I thought it was.
The judge asks Ms. Bone how she was able to call her mother about the court date, but didn't contact her attorney or the court directly. Ms. Bone explains that she borrowed a stranger's phone at a gas station to call her mom, but the person wouldn't let her make a second call. She says she tried to ask her mother to call her attorney, but the call ended before she could give his name. The judge points out that her mother still could have called the court. Ms. Bone replies that her mom didn't know the name of her lawyer, or even which county the case was in. The judge then asks if there was anyone else in Eola she could have contacted. Ms. Bone says that none of her friends had working phones either.
And I was going to find transportation to get there. I had asked my mom, but I was not able to. I was unaware of the date. I had put it down wrong.
Where do you live?
Your Honor.
Just a moment. Where do you live? No, ma'am, answer my question. Where do you live?
In Iola.
I'm sorry?
Iola, Kansas.
You live in Iola with your mom?
No.
Oh,
I
you're
live,
out?
yes.
How far do you live from your mom?
She lives in Chanute.
So you were able to call your mom and talk about your case, but you weren't able to call the court or your attorney.
I had used someone else's phone.
But you couldn't use someone else's phone to call the court or your attorney.
They would not let me. They ended up leaving.
Oh, they'd let you call mom, but not the court or your attorney. What's this person's name?
They were a person I ran into at the gas station. I had met them like once. All I know is her first name, but she didn't. Apparently, she wasn't staying in that town, but she.
So somebody rolled into town to the gas station. You saw them, and you asked to use their phone.
Yeah, and I was like, I need to call my mom for a ride for court, and I need to call my attorney.
The judge thanks Ms. Bone, then asks Mr. Taylor, the bondsman, to speak. Mr. Taylor explains that after the bond was forfeited, he got in touch with Ms. Bone and gave her the option to come in willingly. She agreed and came with him to court without needing to be handcuffed. He adds that she stayed in contact with him once she found out about the forfeiture and even reminded him about the court date the night before. The judge acknowledges this effort but raises concerns about the timing. According to court records, the notice of forfeiture was sent to the bondsman back in August. Yet Ms. Bone is only now appearing in court.
And she's like, okay. And she let me call my mom first because I told her that would be the first call to do. And then she got mad at me when I was almost off the phone with my mom and tried to take the phone. And she hung up the phone on my mom and then took it and walked off.
And you couldn't ask your mom to call your lawyer or the court?
I was in the process of asking her. I had started to ask her. I was like, hey, can you call my attorney? And I did not get to tell her the name before she literally jerked the phone. My mom does not know my attorney's name.
And your mom doesn't know how to call the court. Okay.
She didn't know which county it was either. She was confused on the county.
And you had no way of calling your bondsman?
No, I had not.
And there was not a soul in Iola that would let you use their phone, besides this woman that had come into town unknown to you?
Yeah, I had asked a couple friends the day after, but none of them had active phones.
All right.
I don't have a lot of friends.
Stop. Thank you. All right. Now if I can get the bondsman to come back up and tell me what he was wanting to say.
Once I made contact, whether the forfeiture hearing was in place,
The judge questions Mr. Taylor's decision to delay turning Ms. Bone in, stating that he should have brought her in as soon as the warrant was active. Mr. Taylor defends his actions, saying he believes in giving people a chance to cooperate and prefers when defendants turn themselves in without force. The judge pushes back, saying that kind of delay can be seen as helping someone avoid arrest, and he's concerned about the message it sends. He adds that it's not the bondsman's role to decide when someone with a warrant should come in. Ms. Gillette agrees. She says that while the state is willing to withdraw the motion to forfeit the bond, the delay in bringing the defendant in is not acceptable, especially since this is Ms. Bone's second time failing to appear in court.
Before that, I tell them we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And if they stay in contact with me and till the time comes, then we will get her over here. And I didn't have to put her in handcuffs or any of that stuff. She voluntarily came today. I just wanted to make sure you knew that part of it. It wasn't a hunting her down and bringing her in, Your Honor.
She voluntarily came today, but she didn't come the last 2 times.
Right. Well, like I said, I was just adding my point that she did voluntarily come with me and she did stay in contact with me once I let her know there was a forfeiture and that we needed to bring her over for that court date. And so she did.
And when was that?
I couldn't tell you the exact date. It's been 30 days probably that when I got it. And like I said, I contacted her and let her know what the date was. And you know, like I said, I usually tell them if I can make contact with them and they're receptive to that and we can get them in here and they'll walk in with them, then I'm okay with that versus having to put them in handcuffs and take them to jail. And they stayed in contact with me and actually reminded me last night of the court date today. So they were helpful that way. She was helpful that way.
She told you last night when her court date was?
Right. She reminded me. Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
Well, Mr. Taylor, what troubles me, besides the obvious defendant not appearing, is that the post office says they delivered notice to you of this hearing in Chanute, Kansas, August 19th.
Gillette points out that Ms. Bone could have attended her court dates through Zoom, but made no effort to contact her attorney or the court. She also notes that the court had no up-to-date phone number or address on file for her. The judge agrees, saying that people from out of state regularly manage to attend hearings remotely, so there's no valid reason someone nearby couldn't do the same. Ms. Gillette then asks that the defendant be taken into custody under the terms of her current bond. She also stresses that it's the bondsman's responsibility to make sure defendants show up to court, and suggests that Mr. Taylor's actions allowed Ms. Bone to avoid taking responsibility.
24 at 10:26 a.m. and you're just now getting her to me, and yet you said she's been in contact with you.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you don't surrender them until I don't understand why you didn't turn her in before now.
When you give us the court date that I have to present them on that day, if I can make contact with them and they're working jobs and they're trying to continue their life and do it right, and they'll follow that, I get them in here for that new court date.
Well, I see that as potentially aiding a felon, or when you know that they've got an active warrant and you don't turn them in. I have a real problem with that. And you've known since August 19th she had an active warrant, and you chose to wait until today to turn her in. So that's very troubling to me. So, Ms. Gillette, again, at this time you're wanting to set aside the motion to forfeit the bond?
Yes, usually when they do bring them in by
The court agrees with the concerns raised and criticizes Mr. Taylor for allowing Ms. Bone to stay out of court for nearly 2 months. The judge explains that Mr. Taylor won't have to pay the $15,000 forfeiture at this time, but firmly warns him not to advise defendants to delay turning themselves in. He says this kind of behavior goes against the trust and responsibility placed in bondsmen. The judge makes it clear that deciding when a defendant appears in court is not up to the bondsman. He adds that actions like this could lead to a bondsman being removed from their role. Ms. Bone is officially ordered into custody, and her bond is reinstated at $30,000.
Made the comment. I thank you, sir, for zooming in from Arizona when we have people that are 2 blocks from the courthouse that can't Zoom. These are Zoom hearings where she could have been on television and not had to be brought to the courthouse. At this point, I am asking her to be taken into custody on her $30,000 cash or professional surety bond. She needs to make a bond. She needs to understand her bondsman should be her best friend, and they are responsible for getting her to court.
Well, it sounds like he has been. He's kept her out and kept her doing whatever it is she wanted to do for the last 2 months.
Yeah, well, he didn't on August 2nd, and her hearing wasn't in September, it was in August. And so I would ask for the bench warrant to be served, her to be taken into custody, and her to need to post a new bond.
Mr. Thomas, Thomas.
The judge points out that this isn't the first time Ms. Bone has missed a court date and notes that a previous bondsman brought her in more quickly. He asks Mr. Taylor what the defendant has been doing over the last 2 months. Mr. Taylor says she has been living in Iola with her children and has stayed in touch with him. The judge reminds Mr. Taylor that the court, not just the bondsman, is the authority Ms. Bone needed to keep in contact with. After that, the judge dismisses Mr. Taylor and calls Ms. Bone back to officially confirm her custody status. He stresses that while Mr. Taylor may trust her, the court does not.
She started out at a lower bond. She did this with Kirkman, but they, I think, got her in here a little quicker. And now she's done it with you. What's she been doing for the last 2 months, Mr. Thomas? Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry.
Taking
Know
care
what
of
she's
kids.
been up to, what she been doing.
Well, she's been in the Iola house up there with her kids, working, I believe.
You believe?
Well, I mean, she's been making contact. I wasn't asking her everything that she did. I was making sure that she's taking in contact with me at the house.
But do you see, you're not the one she's supposed to just make
I understand.
contact with.
I understand, Your Honor.
All right. So you may go, and she needs to come back up here. You may go,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Taylor. Miss Bone, I'm ordering that you be taken into custody for your multiple failures to appear. I will let your new bond of $30,000 stand, although I'm tempted to say no bond, just hold you until we resolve this, because maybe your bondsman and you've got a relationship where he can trust that you're where you're supposed to be, but you and I don't have that.
The judge asks if a deputy is available to take Ms. Bone into custody and prepares to set a new hearing date. Both the prosecution and defense agree that an evidentiary hearing should be scheduled. The court sets the next hearing for October 15th at 10:00 a.m. During this time, the judge hears Ms. Bone talking to Mr. Taylor and notices she seems unsure about trusting him to post bond again. The judge advises her to find a different bondsman if she wants to post bail. Finally, the judge reminds everyone that being a bondsman comes with legal and ethical duties, and such behavior won't be accepted going forward. The hearing ends, and Ms. Bone is taken into custody.